Big weekend in store for your team. You shift the date a little bit because it's graduation weekend, but more importantly, the final home meet of the year as Dayton comes to town. How important of a weekend is this for you and your team?
Well, it's big because it's not just our last home race, but our last race for CAA. So it's, we've talked about, you and I have talked about on these a bunch about our consistency and seeing if we can get solid racing across the board in all the boats. So this is kind of our last chance before it really matters to see that consistency and see if we can have it show up and perform when the pressure's on.
Senior weekend also means the fact that it's a last chance for some seniors to race in front of their parents because they may not all make it to be able to see CAAs, but 7 seniors is your program. They get to walk the day before, but then be out in the boats the next day.
These 7 seniors, not all of them are leaving just because of COVID and having the extra year, but they've been, this is a class that won Dad Vails their freshman year, so it's a class that's been really important to the development of the program as a whole, and them walking. And then, to be honest, that's why we rescheduled the race, because every year I've been here for 14 years, we've had graduation on a Sunday, and I was planning, and then I realized graduation was on a Saturday, so we rescheduled to Sunday. But it's nice because now parents can be there, they're already coming for graduation. We'll have a little bit more of the parent fan base, and I think it's a good chance for us to kind of celebrate the seniors on their last home racing opportunity and in their last couple weeks here at Ford Lake.
Let's rewind the clock a little bit. Last week, beautiful weekend, no racing. But the weekend before, you go to the Susquehanna. I know it wasn't the most ideal setup because the course was shortened just with weather conditions. How did that affect the team?
It doesn't super affect it because of how high the flow rate was. So the times are about right. For a 2K, but it changes your strategy a little bit because it's shorter, but it's also rowing against the current's a lot heavier, so we have to make some gearing changes to make it feel roughly the same. We had kind of, again, inconsistent results we raced really well in the morning and beat Bucknell, who was ranked ahead of us. We raced really well. Then we came back and raced Villanova and finished 5 seconds down on them. And that's not really where we had us predicted. So kind of all over the place. And then the 2V was opposite, lost to Bucknell and then beat Villanova by a second. So we kind of traded 1V and 2V. And that's the consistency we keep talking about. And I know that I believe the 1V who has been going through exam week will tell you that's been a lot of the push this week, is particularly for me, is can we turn out our best results over and over and over and over again?
I know you've talked a lot about consistency in these, but also competitiveness is a big thing that's changed a lot. You've had a lot of races this year decided by a second or less. Bucknell was one of them. You think back to Michigan State, it was tenths of seconds. Even Alabama was a second or so. What's been the biggest change to narrowing those gaps across the board?
I think it's part of the development of the maturity of our racing as for our athletes. It started last spring with racing Wisconsin at Wisconsin and beating their 2V by a second or so. I think it's finding that ability to, when you are close, stay internal in your boat and row to the best of your ability, not get drawn into what the other boat's doing or distracted, and finding that kind of flow state, where you're not really thinking about it, you're just executing and kind of letting your body do it, and then your brain's pushing you to go harder as your body's telling you can't, and you kind of have to find that new mental state.
Looking back at the Susquehanna races, you raced a lot of races, more so than you've done in any. How does that also help on the turnaround times, getting them used to a situation like that where they're not going to have a big gap?
I think, most of our practices are built kind of that way. Last Saturday we did 3x2K and only had about 10 minutes between pieces, so an hour or so is a little bit bigger. But I think it's more of that being able to find your center, like race, have the emotions of a close race, have the effort of a close race, and then coming back, resetting yourself, and then going back out and doing it again is difficult. And one of the places that, like, when we talked about consistency, like, part of it's the maturity of, like, well, we raced really hard in the first one, like, we're going to have some loss in this one. Not necessarily, like, especially with that hour and a half, like, yeah, you might have some loss, but it's going to be a tenth of a second or so, not 4 or 5 seconds.
Dayton to school this weekend, an A10 team. What's the biggest difference that you see between teams of the A10 and the CAA?
To be honest, it's the top of the A10 looks a lot like the top of the CAA. I think maybe Northeastern and Drexel might be a little bit quicker than Rhode Island and Massachusetts are right now. But Dayton was at the George Mason Invite last weekend. They saw Villanova, they saw Drexel, they saw St. Joe's. St. Joe's saw Drexel the day before. So we have some good cross racing happening. I think with the kind of the Patriot League, the CAA, and the A10, the top of those 3 conferences are kind of close together and have some decent overlap in speed. And I think seeing anybody in the 3 gives us an idea, because of all the cross racing we do, of where you're going to fall even inside your own conference or regionally. Even though the A10 is not in our region, it still gives us a pretty good idea.
I know we reminded people last time we had a home meet, but there is great advantage points to watch these races. They also need to remember they can't actually park at the boathouse.
Yes. Boathouse is closed for anyone that isn't athletes. We are all the spectator areas at Ford Lake Park, which is on Huron River Drive. It's a nice big city park. Go towards the boat ramp side and you'll be right there on the finish line of the course. Also, for our spectators, we have a tent that's there for our referees, and they need to make sure they're focused. So some people have been asking questions. Just maybe help them out, give them some space, just like you would give a referee on the basketball court some space.
I know we're going to chat again before CAA. So this isn't our final chat of the year, but it is weeks closer to sledgehammers swinging away at your current setup in your room downstairs, in a massive transformation that's about to take place inside this building to make your team better.
Yeah. We are, the official date is supposed to be May 1st when we can start, tearing down. Graduation is the 30th. They use the room that day. And then we are in the process of changing our space to be our space, not a borrowed space.
Yeah. For people that forget, you took over the old football team room when they left to go to the Student Athlete Performance Center.
Yeah, and that room is designed really well for meeting space and small group meeting space, but we don't really have that need. We're mostly one big group meeting, and so we are going to clear some walls, do some floors, new HVAC setup, so that we finally have a purpose-built erg room that's large enough for our team. Like, our old erg room was great, but it was too small. We can only fit about half the team at a time, so it ran double practices for the coaches every day. So this new space is going to have space for everybody, space for us to continue to grow, as well as having some lounge space for our athletes, office space for the coaches that's ours finally, not bouncing around all the time. So it's going to be a huge change for our program.
How important is it, because you mentioned not only a training space, but a gathering spot for them to do homework, just be kids together, something that right now they don't have the luxury of doing as a team?
Yeah. I've been here 14 years. The program has been here since 01, so 21 years. And at no point have we had a locker room space, or our space has been small, or in the last couple of years been borrowed. So I think having a permanent space that's built for us, that's designed with us in mind, that, I've sat down with the designers, Andy sat down with the designers and made sure it's the space that we need to be successful for our indoor is a huge thing for this team. It's something really that hasn't happened with the input. Even the boathouse didn't really have the coaches' input like we have for this space. So it really shows the commitment EMU is making to rowing and how exciting it is to like.
On that commitment level, where will this place you on a national scale? Because I'm sure nationally there's only so many places that are going to have a space similar to yours.
So definitely in the top half. I haven't seen everyone's erg room set up, but it's nice because it's on campus. A lot of people have their erg room in their boathouse, which is off campus. I mean, it's not going to be, some of the Big Ten. I know Michigan just built like a $16 million. Like, we're not going there. We don't. That's not real.
Adequate.
Yeah, they built a SAPSI for just rowing. So for us, I think it's going to put us in the top half. It's definitely going to put us probably in the top 3 in the conference and give us a nice space to be able to show to alumni, recruits, and for the team to kind of have their own, like have some pride in what they've done and what they've built and being their space.
And I'll get you out of here on this. Another chance for alums to come back, show support of this program, something I know means a lot to you when they're able to come back.
Yeah. Our alumni, like I said, I've been here for 14 years, so there's been a lot of people that have rolled through, and any chances we have to like show them that the sacrifices some of them made to keep rowing going at their time and keep us going are finally paying off in the big spectrum, and they should be proud of all the things that are coming because they kept us alive to get here.